So now the parallelism you can create of one line. Let's say I create a parallelism of this line. So let's say I have non-collinear lines, like for example these two lines are non-collinear, they are not parallel to each other, non-parallel. So if I want to draw a line which is parallel to this line, so bring that cursor over here so you can see the parallelism snapping is there, and just don't click anywhere, just move it. You can see the angle along with the length. So if you want to make the line parallel to this line, so just get the parallelism icon created, and you can see that right. So now you can see, so you have got two parallelism which is created. So what is happening is, at this moment of time, this is overriding it. So let's say I remove this, and you can see that now it is a 41 degree parallelism. So if there is a line which is here, and let's say I want to draw a line which is parallel to this, so this is a 56 degree, or I want to draw a line parallel to this 41 degree. But if I want to draw a line parallel to this, so in this case this is going to dominate. So this is also, you need to understand which parallelism is going to dominate. So if I want to use the transparent commands over here, so it is let's see how it works. So I have a line, and I put the snapping, object snapping off. So I want to draw a line which is parallel to this, so I write PAR. So then you have this parallel over here. And if I want to draw a perpendicular to this line, so I write PER, perpendicular, and bring it here, so a perpendicular. So now you can see that though the line is not intersecting, an apparent perpendicular is shown over here. For example, if let's say if I want to draw a line which is perpendicular to a particular line which is not intersecting anywhere, so in this case what I do is, let's say I go for the line, and let's say I want to draw a line perpendicular to this line, so I say PER. So you can see that the perpendicular option starts showing you, and you can click. Now let's see what the tangent is. So if you have a circle, if you have an arc, you create an arc. So now tangent is a line which touches a curve at a single point, right? So it is so that point is called the tangency. So let's say if I want to create a tangent, so let me set the tangency over here, tangent clear all, and take the tangent checkbox on. So I have this line, and here you can see the moment I put it on, a tangent icon. So you can see the icon over here, which is a circle and a tangent. So it is very visible. So I want to draw another line which is tangent to this. So this is marked over here. So I want to draw which is tangent to this arc. I can do that. So tangent should be to a curved entity. It can be an arc, a circle, can be an ellipse also. Let's say if I draw a line, and you can see the tangent to this ellipse also. So it is a wonderful option. And let's say if I want to draw a circle, which is circle can be also have tangency, definitely. So it is, the tangency is maintained. So this is the tangent option in the object setting. Now comes some of the other tools, like the extension, very interesting, and apparent intersection, which is another very interesting, and then the insertion and node. So insertion and nodes are basically two things that I will discuss about, which is also very important and has very good application in AutoCAD. So let's talk about the extension and as well as the apparent intersection. Now apparent intersection is where basically physically two objects are intersecting, but here there is an apparent intersection over here. Somewhere over here the line is going to meet. So if I want to snap that point and create a circle at the intersection of these two lines, so I press C. But here what is happening is, and then here with the apparent intersection I need to put the endpoint also on, right? So I have this apparent intersection on and the endpoint. So what I'm doing is, the moment I say C, circle, and see, I can always go for the setting inside a command also. So I put the command here as app int. I need to put app int, that means apparent intersection, and here I go this one and click on it, and then the moment you bring it to this line, the apparent intersection snapping appears, right? So this is the apparent intersection. So let's say, so I go with the APP, apparent intersection, and let's say I put it here, so I can get an apparent intersection at this curve also. So apparent intersection is very important when you need to have create something which is apparently find out an intersection of two curves which is not intersecting actually, but they can intersect at a particular point. So next is basically going the insertion and the node. So see the icons over here, so it is predominantly shown over here. So I'm just increasing the aperture size so that and the auto snap marker size. So we'll come to understand what is this, but set the display size for the object snap target box, and this is the sets the display size of the auto snap marker. Let's see what happens. So let's say I have a line, so you can see the marker size has increased, right? So this is the aperture box and this is the marker size. So if you want to have bigger marker size in the aperture box in the cursor, the aperture box is the box inside the cursor. You can see the dotted line over here. So coming back to it, now we have some of the options like the node. So for that I would like to come to the point which is right now I have not discussed, but node is basically the point which is there, or there might be a survey points over here. So I'm not covering that particular topic of point, but just wanted to make you understand that nodes are basically the snapping are the points, are snapping to the point. So for example, if I want to create a line joining all the points by points that are created by using the point tool in AutoCAD, so we'll be discussing later, but here it's very important for me to make you understand what is a node. So let's say I go to the object snap option and say I need the node option. So here I create a line. Now you can see that the node is snapped. Very interesting. And if you want to create an arc, let's say creating the nodes, right? And beautiful option. So this is the node. Node means the points, snapping the points, AutoCAD points. And the last is the insertion. So for that, insertion is the point of the insertion of the block. So for that I need to have a block. So I'm quickly creating a block. Let's say I'm creating a discuss about block. What is block? So here, let's say here I pick a point is the insertion point of the block. Block is an object that is repeatedly used in a CAD drawing. Select an object. So you remember that this is the insertion point that we had kept for the block. So insertion point is the point when we create a block and bring it over here and put it in the drawing area, picking that point, that is the insertion point. So over here this is the insertion point, but if you want to snap this insertion point which you have created, which you have marked while you're creating the block, so you need to go to the object snap option and insertion point, and here we have. So if I want to create, now you can see the insertion point is showing over here. So insertion point is the insertion point of a block, and the concept of the block will be done later in the sessions. So just for your knowledge, because we have to cover the object snap setting fully, that's the reason I introduced the block option. And then now going towards, we did the object snap. Now I want to take you to the polar tracking. So this is very interesting. So with the polar tracking on, we have this F10 button, or you can click over here. So what is the polar tracking and object snap track settings on? So you can have this object track settings. It's a very wonderful tool. So let's see it, how it works. Okay, now moving forward, there are certain things that with the object snap I need to discuss with you. One is basically, if you don't find, let's say now you can see it in the status bar, So I am going to remove it. So here is the 2D snap object snap option. So if it is not there in the status bar, you can do the similar operation. Go to the customization of the status bar and bring the 2D object snap option back. Other thing that I want to discuss is, I want to tell you is, let's say if you have all the options selected, right, and you find that you want to basically deselect some of the options, so you do not have to go again to the drafting setting dialog box. What you can do is you can basically click on the selected options and deselect it so that it is not available in the object snap setting. So here I go and change the setting and only the endpoint is visible. Now you can see only the endpoint is selected. So this is one option. The other thing is that, let's say if you have a circle, so circle will be having a quadrant and a center. So if you want to toggle, for example, again I'm taking a rectangle, if you want to toggle between the mid, end and the other thing, so toggle means what? Toggle means, let's say if you have selected all the option, select all, and or you select some of the options that are visible, that is apparent in this object. So I take select all and I invoke a command. Now let's say here I am having the snapping as quadrant, so I press the tab key. So the tab key will be basically cycling me towards the snapping setting. So I can cycle through the available object snap in the object. For example, I am at the midpoint, so I can press the tab key here. So whichever snapping I desire, I can tap to, pertaining to that particular object where I am. So if I bring it here, so press the tab key, so you can see that you have the endpoint, you have the object center, so geometric object center. So here you are. So this is something that, so press the tab key to cycle through the selection. Now let's come to the polar tracking. So again, so the polar tracking comes up with certain settings. What is the polar tracking? So remember, in the session 1 we have talked about polar coordinate systems where a length and an angle is there visible. So here let's use it and see how it works. So for the polar track setting, so you have to go to the object snapping, and here we have the polar tracking setting. So to put it on, just select the checkbox or an F10 key. So you can see that the F10 key, so if you put it off, the polar tracking is off. So here you have this one. So this is the tracking. So it talks about 91. So you have got different settings over here. So this is the icon of the polar track. So now it says that you can track to 90 degree only. So you can, same thing will happen. So here the put it on by checking the checkbox or selecting the checkbox, or you can also toggle it from here. You can see the polar on and off this here, or you can press the F10 key. So I am putting the F10 key, so I have a Windows 10. So the function and F10 key together can snap, or you can always press the button over here to put the polar tracking on and off. So here in the settings you can find that you have the incremental angle as 90 degrees. So what happens, so if you take a line tool and click it, now you can see that it is tracking, it is giving you a length and angle at 0 degree, and then the next tracking will be allowed at the 90 degree. So you can find that the tracking goes here. So at 90 degrees increment, 90, 180, so these are increments of 90 degree. So let's say if I have a line, I want to draft a line at 90 degree and then 0 degree. So at an increment of 90 degree, I can have the track at a particular length also. Polar coordinate system methods basically gives you ability to create a line with an angle and with a length. So here you have a length of 2.7 or 3.02, and then you can track and then you can create a line. So now let's say we change the incremental angle, go to the track setting, or you can also go with OS option, and here with the polar tracking, and say I need it at incremental angle of 30 degree. So I change it. So the moment I change it, you can see that it becomes 30, 60, 90, 120. That's an incremental angle. So make sure that the polar tracking is on. So you have the line over here, and then over here then press it and see at 0 degree you are having, and then just you move the cursor, 30 degrees there, and then you have this, you have the 60 degree again, 60, 30, 90 degree, and then at let's say next would be 120 degree, and then next would be 150, and so on. So you can see that the polar tracking is working at an increment that you have mentioned. Apart from that, if you want some additional angle, so if you need, let's say to track a 15 degree, or you need to track 12 degree, you can mention it. And other thing that you would see that the angle measurement here, we have two radio button settings. One is the absolute and one is the relative to last segment. So what is the relevance of this? By default it is absolute. So what is happening is absolute means, so once you're tracking, now just observe, so you have this 0 degree, and then you have the track for the additional angle 12 and 15 and 30 degree. So you have this, so again you have the 0. So absolute means the absolute base angle is the x-axis. So all the angles are measured from the base axis. So it is again 12 degree, and then the additional angles are there, the incremental. It will now go according to the incremental angle. So the meaning of additional angle is not the increment, but at 12 degree from the 0 base. So now let's say if I require to behave, to make my polar tracking behave from the previous direction. For example, I want to make it as 0, but it is showing 30, and I want to create a 30 degree line from this particular here, or a 15 degree. I want to create the incremental from this particular line. So for that I have to go and go to the track setting and say relative to the last segment. So now if I do the relative to the last segment and check my track settings, is here we have a 30 degree increment and additional angles. I put it off right now. So now I have this line and put the endpoint. Now this is the 0 degree, that is the last segment, 0 degree is there, and then I do a 30 degree, again it becomes 0, then I do a 30 degree with the last segment. So it is very easy for me now to basically draft something which is from the angle is measured from the last segment, right? So this is the settings, the meaning of the setting of absolute and relative. So now next what I would be discussing about the object snap track settings, track orthogonally. Now this is really, I used to do it in many cases while doing a civil drafting, especially the structural and the site drawings. So what it is, so there are two settings. So object snap tracking, so this is something, so you put it on from here, so it is on here, and so if you press the function 11 key, so you have this on and off, function 11, right? So I'm putting the function 11, so it is right now it is on. So let's say I have a rectangle here, and what I do here is I put the polar tracking off. So I'm tracking it orthogonally, right? Orthogonally means 0, 90 degree and other thing. So what does it mean actually? So if I want to create something, I want to track the midpoint of it, I want to track this midpoint, and at the intersection of these two midpoint I want to create something. Let's say I want to create a circle. So it can be tracked from object snapping geometric center, but here I'm tracking it. So this is how it is happening. So it is tracking orthogonally. So let's go with the circle command now. So I have this midpoint over here, so I'm tracking it, and similarly I have a midpoint, so I can track it, and here it comes over here. So because the geometric center is there on, so I just wanted to put it off, the object snapping in the geometric center off, and only the endpoint and midpoint, so you can see the relevance of it. So let's say I want to again, now here you can see the track is prevalent, and here the track is prevalent. So in the intersection of these two tracks I have this center. I can draft something. So if I were to draw a circle right now here, so I am tracking it orthogonally at 0 degree. I'm tracking it at orthogonally at 270 because I'm going down, and at this intersection I can draw this line. Again, if I want to draw a circle, so I can track this one from the midpoint, I can track this point from the midpoint, and here I go. So let's say if I have got two lines here, and one line here and the one line here. Let me create a perpendicular lines, not of object. So I have this line here and I have this line here. Now I have to track the midpoint of this and the midpoint of this. I want to create something over here. I want to create a circle, in fact. So here I go. So I go with the, I'm using the object tracking. So here I take the midpoint over here, I track it. I take the midpoint over here and track it, and at the intersection of this midpoint 0, now you can see it is written midpoint 0 degree and midpoint 270 degree. This is tracked. So the line is there. So if I want to create a circle center point over here, so I take a circle center point, I track the midpoint, and here I go. Similarly, if I want to track the end point over here, this endpoint and this endpoint, and whenever they intersect, I want to create a circle. So circle, so track this endpoint and track this endpoint. Now see, a circle is created. This tracking, object tracking, is very, very important, and it can be set from the tracking settings. Here we have track orthogonally, and then we can also use the polar angle settings also here, right? So when we use the polar angle settings, so now the tracking is done only 0 degree, 90 degree, 180, but when you use the polar angle settings, it will take the polar tracking incremental angle that you basically set in F10. So to put it on and off, so now it's on. Now let's use this option where I am using the polar tracking setting incremental angle as 30 degree, and I'm saying track using all angle setting. So how it works, so I want to create a circle center point. So here I go. So now we have this 300 degree track, and so at the intersection of this I create a circle. Now see, I can create a lot of trackings, like for example I have this endpoint, so circle, so here is a 0 and here is a 30 degree. So at 60 degree, so I want to create an intersection point of a line which is a 60 degree angle from this particular point, and so and a 300 degree, I mean obviously the multiple of 30 degree, and here I go. This is the use of the object snap tracking with the polar setting on. Now at the end of this object snap and the function keyboards, let's do quick check of the function control key. F1 is for the help, so if you press F1, the help will be there. F2 is for the graphical screen or the text window. So let's see how it works. So if I press function F2 over here, the text that has been written in the AutoCAD command from the start of the project, so all text history will be there. Similarly, you can go with the function F2 to press it off. Next is the F3. We talked about object snap on off. You can have the control F. And then when we'll be doing 3D, then we will be going with 3D snap on off. F5 is for the isoplane top right, and the dynamic UC is F6. F7, again we have discussed about grid on off. Control G, Control D is for the dynamic UCS, and F9 is the snap we have already done. So Control B is for the F9. Polar tracking we did, and 11 is for the object snap tracking that we have just discussed. And the last but not the least is the function F12 key for the dynamic input on and off. So we'll be discussing about dynamic input later on, but this is where we end the discussion regarding the object snap and different keys. So F1 to F12, I hope you remember all these things, and we have discussed almost isoplane. We have discussed about snapping with polar tracking, object snap tracking, ortho, on, off, and a lot of things that we have done. So in the next session now, we will be discussing about some drawing objects like the drawing arcs, drawing ellipse, and placing points. So that's very important. Construction lines, very, very important. Trimming the object, extending the object, and stretching the object, lengthening the object, mirroring the text, and points at specified intervals, joining the sketched object, and then we'll go for layers.